program tonight. All right.
Thanks, Yvonne, and welcome everybody. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. Welcome to the Wanda Coleman Theater, and welcome to the Southern California Poetry Festival. I'm really excited to have this festival and have all of you here. It's over 3 days. It started last night, all the way through today and tomorrow. We've had a great lineup of programs. I really appreciate those of you who have stuck around throughout the day. If you're just getting here, I hope you stick around for a little longer. We have some great programs coming up, including a program from the Tijuana Underground, and then a reading of newly commissioned work from Harmony Holiday, Erin Marie Lynch, and Gail Ronsky later this evening. So this afternoon, we are here for Poetry in the Making, Mizna staff and contributors on Chapbooks and publishing. I'll dive right into that in just a second. But before we started, I did want to begin by acknowledging Beyond Baroque's presence here on the ancestral unceded territory of the Gabrielina Tongva peoples. We acknowledge the wrong done to these peoples through settler colonialism and genocidal practices. As an arts organization, Beyond Baroque is committed to uplifting Indigenous writers, their narratives, and their art. So just to say a few words about this program, I think it's worth acknowledging the wider cultural context. Right now, there is an active genocide going on in Gaza at the moment. There has been a huge sort of move towards censorship and repression in the culture industry in the United States for anybody who is speaking about this. And we really wanted to be, we've had a number of events held in solidarity with Palestine over the past year, but we really wanted to be in dialogue about the sort of wider cultural context of what it means to be Arab American, the wider SWANA population who is thinking about writing and producing books, whether that's just as individual writers, but also within that larger cultural context. So we invited Mizna, as well as the Radius of Arab American Writers, to help us put together a program around publishing in the poetry world right now. And fortunately, thanks to Lana Barkawi, the Mizna director, and Elina Katrin, who's here with us, Mizna staff, we put together a really wonderful program of readings and then a little conversation about chapbooks and their experiences in the publishing world. So just to keep it brief, we are going to have each of our participants come up and read, and then afterwards they're going to sit down for a brief discussion amongst themselves, and there will be time for an audience Q&A. I will say that these are all really wonderful writers. I encourage you to pick up their chapbooks and other publications by Mizna authors in the bookstore afterwards. I'm sure they'd be willing to sign them afterwards. But without further ado, to get into each of our authors' bios, Summer Farah is a Palestinian-American writer and editor from California. She's the author of I Could Die Today and Live Again, and she is calling on everyone to recommit themselves to the liberation of the Palestinian people each day. Elina Katrin is a Syrian-Russian immigrant and the author of the poetry chapbook If My House Has a Voice. Her writing was selected as a semi-finalist for the Pablo Neruda Prize for Poetry and has appeared in Electric Literature, Poetry Daily, Sundaglit, Honey Literature, and elsewhere. She works and organizes with Mizna as a community engagement coordinator and holds an MFA in creative writing from Hollins University. Sarah Yanni is a Mexican-Egyptian writer and editor. She is the author of Hard Crush and has published work in the Los Angeles Review of Books, Mizna Wilderness Journal, Spectre Poets, and others. With a delegation of 7 other poets, she was selected to represent Los Angeles at the Cultural Olympiad in Paris earlier this year. So we're going to start with Summer, and then we'll have Elina and Sarah. So please, everyone, welcome Summer Farah.
Thank you. Okay, cool. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay with the mask? Awesome, thank you so much. So my chapbook, I Could Die Today and Live Again, is poems inspired by The Legend of Zelda. Sort of combines my sort of diasporic relationship to Palestine in the game setting of Hyrule, and imagines what happens to a childhood corrupted by empire. So this poem is in the voice of a non-player character, a couple that dances just in a circle on repeat in several of the games. The way they dance in Hyrule Square. It's the end of the world. No, really this time. I swear I've heard the familiar chimes of 3. The timer is counting down. If you look at our lives with the right perspective, a bridge disintegrates in the distance. Listen. No, I know we've lived this before. Mid-spin, I saw the shopkeeper's skin turn gray and hair trickle to the stone streets. Do you remember him? The boy with a fairy rushing through the town square, peddling masks back and forth and nosing in about our day? Sometimes it feels like eternity here. Choose your focal point. Hyrule sun, mask shops, clock tower. Memorize. Music leaking from each corridor, the bubble of chatter as merchants' horses arrive at the mouth of town. We spin. I fear we've made this turn before. The moon and sun are parallel again. I've seen that child. I can imagine him older too. Somehow it's like he's here in the when of us. Our bones shake with fatigue, with age. Our re-dead, rotted hearts know the tempo of dance to pulsate through the shrillness, become our necks. Oh, all my life I've wanted love. Thought it meant focus. A hand touching another with no one else in the world as we spin. I wanted love, but I did not want my life to be only pirouette completed through witness. A life, too, is to go where the songs do not allow. What happens when the eye is beyond the castle wall? Where am I? Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. The player is asked, do you need me to repeat that? Yes or no? And then this one is called Interlude Parallel Playing with You, and it is for my dear friend Jessica Zhang. Forgive me, I am forgetting that which is good in service of narrative. In the needle aisle of a craft store, I confess, I am afraid of getting close to someone again. Lines crease the corner of my eyes, phantom laughter, relics of the voices I will not hear again, unless the worlds are small, each made up of archetypes repeated across titles and end cards, but not within. In this lifetime, there is a princess and a hero, no more, no less. In the next, there will be 2, unless, consider the end of the map where the rock walls blur and the abyss endless, costing a quarter heart with each fall. Again, I try. I want to know what lies at the bottom. Consider the abyss, a reset point. Selves that always return to the ledge, how lonely it can be to be a certain type of character. Singular purpose, looped dialogue, how lucky am I to find someone who slots into the same role. A friendship can be found in serendipity of reading the same story at the same time without the other knowing, found in sitting side by side. I play on the TV and you play handheld, and the hum of our systems are complementary, the gentlest of silences. Habit found in I watch a show and you will exist next to me until we wait for the next season together in the gentlest of silences filled by shared guilt. We talk of the unmeasurable weight of wanting to do good, twinned in our overwhelm of how to serve well, of how to be kind, in disbelief in those who won't do the same. We can practice here and consider the space between 2 couch cushions worlds. Teach me your obsessions for when I miss you most, and I will help you fight monsters in the depths. Pray I look cool even if I fuck it up. Tell me about your progress in that other game, and I promise I won't ruin the rest. Consider the sequel grants us who gravitate towards the ledge second chance, a curious reward, another kingdom to touch instead of. Please tell me and tell me and tell me. We'll never get tired of this. Thank you.
If you're comfortable.
You?
Yeah, cute and cozy. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Summer, for getting us started, and to Beyond Baroque for having us. I'm really grateful to be here representing Mizna. So if you have any questions about our nonprofit and what we do, please come find me afterward. But I'm going to read 2 poems from my chapbook, If My House Has a Voice. It is a collection of longing for places, cultures, and people to whom the speaker belongs. This first poem is called On the Other End of Translation. Majiddo's smile is a purple fig, sliced open. Her video chat connection doesn't stop him from telling me, Inti halwa, and I see that to him, I am pretty, despite dead pixels and distance. Syria, Russia, America. In a 3-way call, my father loses track of languages, and in this orchard of words, I can't harvest enough of Arabic phrases. Here, أنا أحبك, here, مشتاق لك كتير. I can't scrape off the hardened glue of Arabic from the tip of my tongue, can't pull out the rope of right words stuck down my throat. Я надеюсь, я доживу до того дня, когда увижу тебя лично. I hope I live till the day I see you in person. Majiddo says, my father translates, I translate, I'm at loss. Majiddo knows the feeling like the weight of ripe fruit on his farmer's palm. His wife, my teta, dead 4 months ago. Sons refuged in a foreign land, his brothers killed, some jailed. The loss is stuck to his unstable teeth, sealed in calluses on his fingers, pressed against his abdomen, a burst appendix. So much of the fig is seeds. So much of his smile is gone. Majiddo is as soft as an old plum, as sincere as a tear when he says, these words might be wrong. I can't read Arabic. I can't write. Google Translate reduces all Arabic dialects into one language selection, and this choice is the one I have to trust. Ya Allah, let there be room to feel in a language without speaking it. Here, أنا أحبك, here, مشتاق لك كتير. Take these words, enhance their meaning, multiply, multiply. Thank you. I'm going to read one more, and this poem is for my sister. It's called Base of Fire. I say sister, but it comes out solstice. Each day the longest since I have seen you, I hear you've made a mistake of wanting to be like me. Such pity. I am unfit for the pedestal. You and I sprout from the same root, its rottenness still fresh and spreading through the purple of our siblinghood. There is no way of reversing. The gap between us is closing in. I was 8, 17, 22. You were born 9 and 14. You have seen what happens to daughters who try to be good and modest. I got tired of wearing a smile like a spear, my end always sharpened, pointed inward. I dressed in fear, obedience, patience. Please don't try on my old clothes. always remember how to be held in our Father's arms is to look into a stranger's mouth. The curiosity of it cannot suppress the disgust. So learn from this and grow into a woman who chews the moon like a gumball, who peels the sun with bare hands. I want you to lick the rim of destiny, then smash it, shatter away. When I say sister, you come out soldier. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Both of your readings were so great. Hi, I'm Sarah. Oh, there we go. Yeah, echoing the gratitude. I'm really, really glad to be here. Thank you, Beyond Baroque. Thank you, Mizna. I still remember getting my email that Mizna was going to publish a piece of mine, and I was so excited. I'm going to be reading from my chapbook, Hard Crush, that Wonder Press put out earlier this year. Romance Ecology. Today is all of it. A walk on Chestnut Street. Shoe grooves abundant with silt. To write in the present tense requires listening. At the same time, the grass is asking me to look. In this body, anger, there is a tumult of bird sounds echoing on brick and eucalyptus. To be present is to let all background come undone. This is desert logic, or maybe pond logic, a creek. Have yet to decide between sandy expanse and grapevine meadows. Both douse solitude with stars. I stare up, parched and vocational. I yearn, feminine. Do you hear it? What others think is silence carries accidental sounds, slipping, present again. A rainstorm collision is also known as a kiss. Look, here, the rock sand softens. I couldn't have written this then or before, only now. You point out growth in systems like this is made of that, harmony untouched by man, looking for my origin, for courage, to not be in rehearsal but in truth, to be in geologic time, instinctive and sentimental. Superabundant being wells up in my heart. I do not think I was a desert baby. I think that I was trees and you were lake. And I'm just going to read one more so we can jump into our conversation. This one is called Lesbian Pool Party Part 2. You have to get the book to read Part 1. It is Pride Month, and I am at the lesbian pool party. In photos from this night, you will see me in plaid, hair humid and curly, pink drink happy. It is also my birthday week, meaning my mother and I will dine. And I will not tell her about the lesbian pool party, although it's not that she doesn't know. It's that in photos from a year ago, you see my mother's eyes, red, dry, stiff as can be, the only time she visited the sublet. My post-coming out sublet. My post-coming out no more weddings sublet. Tan leather and balcony, spoons not my own. A year ago, me next to her, begging to be seen, welling at fear of being forgotten. And for months, she sifts my past. A tie-dye sweater, oven mitts, ring now in a cupboard beneath the bathroom sink. Her sister's consolation, calling Mexico every day, searching for order in her Catholic way. And I waited, and they said it would get better, and it did. One cannot arrive except along it and with it, because maybe some love is some sort of endless. Despite the silent months, I'm lucky. because in this year's photos, eyes will be bright. I will form soft edges around story, not mention pink drink, but mention joy. Say, come over for dinner, we'll make flautas together. You can learn a new language in a year or two, I swear, like how my mother knows mask and femme now. In this year's photos, I will blow out candles, bathing suits still drying in the corner. Madre e hija thanking Diosito for another resplendent, healthy year. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Is it on? No. No? Is there a button?
Is there a button?
Hello. Yeah, we can just do one. Okay. Cool. Hi. Thank you for the beautiful reading. So we're gonna chat about making chapbooks and stuff. I want to ask both of you about your approaches to finding a publisher, these projects in general, but maybe like thinking forward and both just how we have our art treated well, but also thinking about the increasing politicization of our identities and how we display our work and think about that. Yeah, so whatever order.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
I think with chapbooks, what I found to be helpful is kind of the same strategy as with submitting individual poems out there. It's like reading the authors the press publishes and seeing if you see yourself in community with those people, and also paying attention to whether the press has the potential to tokenize you if you belong to a certain identity or ethnicity, being very cognizant of that and making sure the press is a space that can uplift your voice and see it for what it actually is, rather than just the community you belong to and just another checkbox that they can select. I think my publishing process with If My House Has a Voice was a bit non-traditional for chapbooks. That's why I'm very excited to hear about y'all's processes. But you know, I think a lot about how chapbooks are like a self-contained project, but for me, this originally was just like my MFA thesis. And when I graduated from my program, I was like, oh, I must submit my full length everywhere, even though that so was not the case, and I did not need to do that. But after a couple of months of that, I saw that Newfound, which is the press that I ended up being published with, and I heard of before, and I have a lot of friends published there. That's Newfound is a press that focuses on specifically place-based narrative. So that's the type of story they like to receive. And I saw that they had the Emerging Poets series, and I was like, oh, I never thought of my project as a chapbook, but let me pull like the most successful like place-based poems or like culture-centered poems from my full length. And I put them in a chapbook and I sent it out to this only contest, and the thing got picked up. But only I think after it got selected by Newfound, I started treating this project as its own thing rather than a prequel for my full length. So I would not recommend doing what I did. I would actually recommend just having your manuscript have its own identity rather than an extension of another project, which it can certainly be, but I think treating chapbook as a chapbook rather than just like some random poems pulled from the manuscript, I think that's something that really helped me. And yeah, Newfound is just a press that I've admired for a long time before submitting to them, so I think that approach could also be really helpful. But yeah.
Similar to Elina, I feel like reading the work of presses, like what authors they have on their roster, is always such a helpful way to kind of cue yourself into their publishing practices and what's going on. With Hard Crush, I had kind of a similar situation of like an unconventional method to publishing this. I was talking to Summer outside about how I used to be just like sending stuff to any contest and any press that had an open reading period, and over the past couple of years I feel like I've just like stopped. I've gotten just like pickier, and not because I'm some great famous person, I'm just like more shy and discerning. But Hard Crush was put out with Wonder Press, and I think just having been around indie lit world for some years now, like they're my friends. And with most presses, like, or not with most, but with many, I know the people personally, so I just have the ability to actually know their politics and their publishing ideals more so than like what's posted on a website. Not to say that those things don't matter and presses signing onto PACB doesn't matter, but obviously it's nice to like know the editors personally and kind of be more clued into how they operate, both as editors and as individuals. And yeah, I went to Joshua Tree with my friend who edited this, and I was like, can I send you my chapbook? And we worked on it, and now it exists. So friendship is really great. Summer, thoughts on publishing?
Yeah. So I've done a lot of like self-published like zines, chapbooks before. My like first writing community was in Slam, and it was like pretty conventional to like staple a bunch of pages together yourself and sell them at features or any, just so you can get best money, like whatever, doing it yourself. And I'm lucky to like know how to use design programs and stuff. And so I had originally planned on this book being a zine. And it was like only like 4 poems and then collages. But I like was talking about it so much on my Twitter that Josh, the publisher from Game Over, reached out to me and was like, if you want to do the Zelda poems with a publisher, like I would like to publish Zelda poems. And like I really like Game Over books. Their kind of author list already was a lot of people who came up in Slam, and then a lot of people who do pop culture poetics kinds of things, and so it felt like a really good fit stylistically and vibe-wise. And when I was thinking about doing a book with a press, like especially a chapbook with a press, they had to offer me something that I couldn't do myself. And in that case, it was distribution. And so, because I hate dealing with the mail, I always have to like double check how to address an envelope, which like is really embarrassing, but I do. I hate doing it. Also, it's so expensive to mail books now, like Jesus Christ. And so, yeah, I was like, well, it'd be nice for someone to like edit these poems instead of me just kind of like sending out what I think. It'd be nice to like have someone else format it for me, because I know how to do it. I'm not good at it. And so that was kind of like, I was like, okay, like maybe I do want more for this idea than what I can do for myself. And it ended up being like a very awesome relationship. I love the people that, it's all a volunteer run press. And we have like an author's Discord. And so there's like a sense of community with it attached as well. And I think kind of, this came out in March of this year, and I've had to fight with a lot of magazines and organizations this year because of their relationship and stance on genocide. And I think that maybe the stupidest thing that I would have had to do is fight with my publisher about my Zelda poems. And I didn't have to fucking do that. Game Over Books is great, PACB aligned, and like I didn't have to do that labor, and it was cool. That's something that became a relationship that was very much grown from a stylistic fit, also became that sort of social and political fit as well. Yeah.
I think the common thread I'm noticing is just like finding the people you see yourself being in community with outside just the literary world, but also like being friends, you know, with your editors and like having people who will advocate for you without you needing to do that yourself. Though, I don't know, I saw your first chapbook. I have a copy and it's fantastic. So you're more than capable of that. But yeah, having community really goes a long way. I think that I was thinking a lot about is sequencing when I was putting together If My House Has a Voice. So I was wondering if the two of you could share a little bit about the ordering process of the poems in your chapbooks, whether that's something that came naturally or whether there were any hurdles that you needed to overcome when it comes to sequencing. Do you want to start?
Sure. I have admittedly a really simple and earnest answer, and this is not all of my writing is this, but this book is a book about having a crush, and it's like these 12 poems chronicle kind of the like falling in love process. The first poem is called Beginning, the last poem is called Devotion. So it was very intuitive, and you know what happens first and then what happens next. So this book was easy to sequence because it's just my feelings.
I love that. That's the best way.
So in my like editorial work, I'm very neurotic about sequencing. That's one of my favorite things of working with poets is putting their books together. And so when doing my own, I was like kind of like very like fixated on like reader experience. And my editor and I tried to sort of make it feel like you're playing a game. And so the experience of like starting and thinking about like, how do we introduce the world that the player is coming into? What are the pieces of lore? What are the characters that we're going to interact with? And then as you go on, just like, you know, in my experience, I start to kind of attach myself more to the world and the characters, and there becomes a projection. And so the poems that sort of had more of a blended voice between game world, real world, sort of like came in the middle, and just sort of until the end where it feels less game world and there's more heavy references that can be more easily identifiable as both Palestine, California, and my own voice. And so, yeah, it was really fun to be really intentional with it. And the second poem that I read, Interlude, it's kind of like it's like in the second third of the book. I wanted it to feel like when you like realize that you've been playing for many, many hours and it's dark and it's kind of like a jarring experience, pulling yourself out of the process of playing. And yeah, so it was very much a very deeply intentional like reader experience. I don't know if it reads that way, but that's how when I play, you know, that was the goal. What about you?
Just vibes, I think, when it gets to me. Well, I tried because I feel like that's something that I struggle with a lot. So I was asking the sequencing questions at any panels I could go to, and everyone was giving me the same answer. It's like print everything out, put it on the floor, put it on the wall. So I was that girl. I was like with poems all over my living room trying to figure out what goes where. And I say it's mostly vibes because I feel like there wasn't like a particular, like I was like, oh, maybe I should do it chronologically, like an immigration narrative of like the speaker first moving to America, but then it just like the flow wasn't there. But I found it helpful to have a set of like different place poems kind of center the collection. So there's one in the beginning, then two in the middle, and one in the end, kind of all the places where the speaker actually lived, like grounding the narrative that way. And through that ordering, I felt it much easier to let go of the like chronological expectation. I kind of allowed myself to trust that the reader will be able to figure out where we are in a poem and where we are in the world. I mentioned age like a couple of times in the book, so I think it's also creates this like visual ability to see how the speaker's world changes around her and how her age changes and the people around her. So Mostly vibes, but yeah, having central pieces kind of centering the collection, that helped a lot. But yeah.
Do y'all read collections in order?
Yes.
Me too.
Yeah, I feel like it's, I don't know, I love just starting from the beginning and
I
seeing that
interviewed
arc.
I interviewed Zaina Hashembek, who's an incredible Lebanese poet who's based in the Bay Area now, and I was asking her about her and Hala Elian, like two just like titans in our community, you know, about ordering, and I was like, I can't wait to learn from their beautiful minds about how to order a book. And Hala was like, I just let my editor do it. And Zaina was like, I don't read collections in order. So and so this is something that I was like, oh, I'm super crazy about this, and they don't give a fuck. Like they're
Very neurotic.
Yeah,
Like, I'm
yeah. So I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse.
It does make me feel
but yeah.
I think vibes are really important as a poet and person. Well, the question I wanted to ask the two of you about, and something I think about in publishing in a larger scheme, is kind of placing works that have either more formal experimentation or stylistic experimentation. The example I was thinking of with each of you, Summer, or you guys didn't see it, but I saw the poem, and the poem about Hyrule Square is in all caps, you know, laid out kind of landscape. Yeah, thank you. And I love an all caps moment. I was thinking about how I see all lowercase all the time, but I rarely see all caps, and it does harken to other forms. And Elina, with you, obviously you're bringing in multiple languages, and you know, even though poetry touts itself as being a very, very experimental space, I think it can be challenging at times to place poems that play with these sorts of conventions. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what your experience has been.
I think I really like to write in prose blocks, and that's kind of the most natural place for me. But when it comes to poems in this book, the ones with the most normative formatting were the ones that magazines took. And the ones that are in all caps or otherwise weird, there's some like shapes in the book, those were rejected. And he's like, I don't know, maybe they're like not the strongest ones. I'm fine with that, considering that as a possibility. But I know that like the reality is like a lot of magazines don't have very complex like web hosting capacities, you know? And sometimes something as like silly as what WordPress layout you pick can dictate what kind of work gets seen. And it's disheartening, I think, especially I think outlets that sort of crave politically radical work that still ask their submitters to conform to like the capacity of a Word doc. But yeah, I don't have super, this book is kind of like the most formal experimentation I've done because I wanted to challenge myself, and I think the chapbook is a good place to do that. But you know, it's a lot of times like poems that are short get picked up because you can take a picture of it and post it online, and a lot of times like, you know, no one is going to buy the copy of Mizna, but they will share the picture that you took of your poem in Mizna. Everyone should buy Mizna. It's a beautiful journal. But Mizna is a magazine that is very encouraging of experimental, kind of like pushing beyond the limits of a normal word processor. It's a bummer to think about, like, I don't know, technology being the technology ease and capacity being such a barrier for more formally interesting work to be out there. Even just like when there's like Arabic text I've seen it misprinted so many times because people don't notice that their design program resets it so that it's not going from right to left. And yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing Misna into conversation. I was gonna do the same, but I mean, I know we like to champion like experimental voices, but I think a part of that is that we are a print journal. Like we have Misna Online digital platform, but having a physical object just like allows you for more flexibility, ironically, because like you still need to deal with printers and stuff, but you're absolutely right. Like the web layout can really dictate what gets picked up and what doesn't. Like to this day, I'm not sure how to submit an erasure poem. Like I never know what I should to like just take a picture and submit that, or what like run it through Word. Like it presents a lot of challenges. Like I have an erasure poem in my book, and like my publisher was like, yeah, no problem, because we can just like print it that way. But when it comes to the digital publication, there's just like many more questions that arise. And I think for me, to answer your question specifically to regarding incorporating many different languages, I noticed that I had a higher chance of a poem getting picked up if it featured Arabic in it rather than Russian. And I think that just made me think a lot about like, oh, like America loves an immigrant, but like maybe a certain type of immigrant, somebody who is like more visibly different, or like when thinking about political context, like the relationship between the US and Russia is so polarized that people are like, oh, any poetry about Russia must be pro-Russia, which means we can't publish it, which I think in turn made me, you know, pull a lot of those poems out. But again, with the genocide in Gaza, we've seen a lot of publications seeking out Palestinian authors, even though before they weren't interested at all. So that's something to think about as well. And again, I feel like I always come back to community and actually like researching the places you submit to and knowing the people there, because I feel like again having those personal relationships make it more likely that somebody is going to be more open regarding working with you, making sure that the work that you write appears exactly how you see fit on the page. I think something that I encountered a lot, again, the technological difficulties. I feel like most people read poems on mobile phones, but that's not how we write them. Well, most of the time, you know, sometimes we write in our notes, but I feel like when I submit, it's always like in a Word doc, and then I open my published poem and it looks completely different, like all the line breaks are off and stuff, which I'm like, that's not how I wanted to break my line, you know, a classic feeling. Yeah, so I think that was a very long-winded answer, but yeah, just a lot of research into places and actually seeing where I see my work, like imagining a space where I see my work and then seeking it out. But just like you, I feel like I used to submit everywhere, like just like seeing what sticks. And then it was like, oh, this is my work. I should be more selective about it because it deserves to be in community with like people and poems that I love and cherish. Yeah.
I'm also gonna plug Misna in my answer. I mean, similar to you both, historically, like a sonnet easily published. My 10-page long poem with different font colors, not easily published. And I had this really jarring moment of I had the privilege to do my MFA at CalArts that was very welcoming to formal experimentation, and myself and all of my friends were writing weird text box art poems all the time, and I'm like, this is what everyone does. And then when I left CalArts and started trying to get them published, I was like, no one does this, like no one likes it. But the kind of my favorite poem from my MFA thesis is this 20-page long poem that it uses documentary poetics. Half of it's grayed out. It's like using all this ancient liturgical language. And Misna published it in their experimental issue. And I just remember feeling so like understood by that, and excited about that. Yeah, and I guess my closing thought is just that there's kind of a funny irony to, you know, this view of print as from the past, outdated, right? Digital is like the future, but these are really the spaces where we have like the most play with layout and form and literature. So chapbooks. Yeah. Did we want to open to audience questions if there are any? A hand raised.
Hi.
Great question. Summer, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So in my life, I use Photopea, which is a free like Photoshop clone that you use in your browser. It's identical to Adobe Photoshop, except you don't have to have a Creative Cloud subscription, a monthly thing. It's a little bit laggy, but that just might be because my laptop is a brick. But I love it. I love Photopea. Most beautiful program. I make all my like zines in it. And then when I use Affinity Designer for formatting and like putting together books. It is you pay one time and then you own it forever, and you get free updates as well. So I'm really anti-subscription service. And so those are the things that I use to make stuff in. But there's a lot of different. And then MagCloud is a really great print-on-demand service that will help you look at like your margins to make sure things don't get cut off. Love them. I think my distinction with zine and chapbook comes from intention. I do think, I mean, chapbooks aren't just poetry, but the way that I imagine chapbooks is a contained project of poetry, and then zine is more mixed media and coming from kind of a different intentions. I do a lot of like one-pager zines, so you fold and you cut a little bit, and then you have a tiny little book that's 8 pages. And there's like different binding practices, and so those are the things that I consider zine. I don't think this is a real distinction, but in my head, the things that I call zines versus chapbook, to me, this is a chapbook because it is a contained project of only poetry. And then things that I've done that are zines, like Elina mentioned, I had like a Mitski zine, and it was like poems and collage, and then I it's just like stapled together. And so, yeah, those are all the programs I use. Yeah, it's great to not pay for stuff. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one last thing. You mentioned stitching, and I wanted just to look at how differently our chapbooks look. Like both of them, all 3 of them are chapbooks, but yeah, mine is hand stitched. This is a different kind of binding, and this is another one. Yeah, I think this is all we have the time for. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Find us afterward, buy our books, buy Mizna. Thank you.